afternoon. This is Howard Wake's Code Green here on this wonderful Monday morning. I am not Howard Wake. No surprise. I'm actually the deputy for today because currently it's spring break, and Howard is what one does in spring break. He's in Cancun on the beach. And that is a joke, but not quite, because he went that direction. He actually went to Tucson, Arizona, where there's an energy conference. So, and I'm covering him here. So I had actually the chance to choose my dream guest today. And so, and my wish was heard. So Jay Fidel is my wish guest today. So
thank you, Martin. It's nice to be here with you.
Thank you very much. So I've been here before. You were gracious enough to give me and Alejandro Yamashita a show, and it's great to be back. And usually you're sitting here. The very first time we met, you were sitting here, and I was sitting there, so now we can kind of reverse it.
Yeah, that's fine.
So good to have you, and we want to jump right into something that we agreed we're both interested in, which is actually the social housing for the houseless.
Yeah.
So tell me why you're interested in that subject matter, Jay.
Well, I think we get a lot of talk about the houseless, otherwise known as the homeless.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody's got a different theory about it, and it's all aspirational, and good for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of money is being spent on that discussion. I think we're doing stopgap measures. We did a program on IHS, the Institute for Human Services, and Jerry Coffey there,
Mm-hmm.
who was the clinical director there. And it was a really interesting discussion of how much they do for the houseless. But I don't see this problem as going away anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it needs disruptive attention, disruptive innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think architecture has to be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there must be a way, if there's anybody I know who can figure out a way, Martin, to make housing for the houseless that is socially oriented
Mm-hmm.
housing for the houseless. It's you. It's a community. It's not just that you're building homes and apartments.
Mm-hmm.
It's that you're building a system where people can live and achieve their goals, however modest or expansive those goals may be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I wanted to have this conversation
Mm-hmm.
with you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And this is a subject that's not new to this table here. I'm sure you've been revisiting that so much with so many people, so many disciplines, and yet the problem is still here. I'm traditionally parking at, which is soon to be Kmart here on Nimitz, because they got 6 days left. Have you actually heard what they're going to do there? I have not. I'm interested in, because it has traditionally been a great procession for me to get to the show, because this is where many homeless are, this is where these public services are, and then you walk by that senior living building, that new building. There's no integration. They live there hermetically sealed, locked up in their little boxes, all fully air conditioned, and they look at Nimitz the whole day. And then I walk through Chinatown, which is a very traditional and potentially future. I had my friend and colleague Dean Sakamoto just run what he calls the Shade. You should actually get him on the show. It's a summer program with students from UH, but also from all over the world. And he brings in the students to work on a subject matter. And they've done Chinatown last semester. And then I come to downtown, and I really need this kind of procession to make obvious to me what's going on and the amount of homelessness actually being around. And also I've been back in Germany as we talked, and I had actually Mitsu bringing me on Howard is on Engineers and Architects Hawaii. And he brought me on there as a speaker again, and the subject was actually the same. And she charged me and say, well, if you go home, actually was that Christmas, you please report or talk about the difference between homelessness in Germany and here. And I was too fast. I basically said, well, that doesn't exist in Germany. And then I started I started my presentation with my first slide because I got off the train and it was cold. It was winter. It was Christmas. It hadn't snowed yet, but it was cold enough. And then there was a houseless person on the street. So it exists. But it's much tougher because if you want or not, you can only survive so much on the street because it gets cold. So here, as we know, this is also one of the reasons we have houselessness here. Also remember when I applied once at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. Flying there, I was talking to the guy next to me, and he was chatting me up and trying to give me the gist of his town. And he basically said, well, don't go to Chinatown, talking Chinatown, because this is where all the homeless are. And I got off the plane. My host was Inge Röcker, who also, when she ever comes here, we should get her. She likes to, was talking, doing some vacation here. She's an amazing woman. She's a street worker there as an architect. Her most awesome project was a pharmacy for drug-addicted women right in Chinatown. And I will never forget that day. I was on an official interview, and she basically said, that starts at 9, I'll pick you up at 7. And her goal was for the day to talk the local head of the electricians, who in his private life was the head of the Hells Angels in Vancouver.
Really?
She talked him into $20,000 donating to that project, and she just basically wrapped him around his finger like in a couple of seconds. So you should get Inge. Inge, hi, I will send this to you, and this is sort of promoting you to come here. So there's a certain similarity of Vancouver and Honolulu, because both are the most climate privileged cities in their countries, because nowhere else. However, I have to say, last year I was in Boston, and then I was actually in Montreal as well. And in Montreal, I thought Canada was more socialist than we hear, but I saw many homeless, too many homeless for being really a socialist country.
Sometimes the system just can't handle it.
Exactly.
It's a breaking point. It's like what's happening in Europe.
Exactly.
You know, up to a point, everybody's very generous and kind. And then there's a break. And then they're not so generous and kind.
And I'm saying that I'm putting this into a sort of a global perspective of that phenomenon, that we have the privilege here, which we should turn into a potential. That basically you can survive on the streets. And I'm saying this very carefully because I don't want to romanticize homelessness at all. But I just want to say maybe there's a potential that we can turn a dilemma into an opportunity. And rather than basically giving them a home, maybe we recognize they're already at home on our island and our state, and we give them the basic necessities what they basically need. And this is obviously, you know, the access to sanitary, systems. This is obviously giving them access to healthcare, but it's also, that's the theme of our show, it's also giving them access to a social community that basically accepts them and integrates them, right? Rather than basically not doing that and pushing them out.
Well, 5 things come to mind. The first thing is you got to have political buy-in. You got to have some champion willing to do it. Secondly, you need an architect to figure it out. Thirdly, you need money. Fourthly, you need a location where the neighbors aren't going to complain. And fifthly, your point a moment ago is you need infrastructure that supports that whole idea. But the notion you raise is very interesting. We don't necessarily want to build them an ordinary conventional building. We just want to give them somewhere that A, will house them, and B, that will keep them off the sidewalks, so the rest of us can go about our business. Because that's really a problem, and it's a problem here. And so, I mean, some of those we can't solve here today, but we can solve others. And the first ones we should solve right after you call the next break, which I think will be soon. We should solve the architectural aspect of it.
We should.
Yeah.
Are we already at the break? No, we got a couple of minutes left. We can? Okay, we take that break. So we're going to be right back with Howard Wiggs, Code Green. That's a little different today. That's Jay and I about social houselessness.
Aloha, I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroot Institute of Hawaii, and one of our delights is to be partnered with Think Tech Hawaii and produce programs every week. Every Monday at 2 o'clock, we have a show called E Hana Kako, which means let's work together. So we bring people from all across the nation and the country, and certainly throughout the islands, together here to talk with them about how to work together, and how to work together to do the following: to build a better economy, a better government, a better society. So if you're interested in the research of our think tank, the Grassroots Institute, or if you're interested in how that's applied at the governmental and community and business levels, you'll enjoy the fascinating conversations with our guests on Ehana Kako every week on Think Tech Hawaii at 2 o'clock on Mondays. Until our next show, I'll see you. Aloha.
Welcome back to Howard Wigg's Code Green Show, today with Jay and myself talking about social houselessness. So before the break, you have challenged me to say, that architecture is an integral, not to say essential part, however, it can't solve it by itself.
Okay, let me refine the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Social. We included the word social for a reason, and that is we have to consider the social requirements of the situation. These people they're alienated, they're disaffected, they live in their own world, some of them have mental issues. And I believe the people with the mental issues didn't have mental issues before they got houseless. The mental issues happened in the process of becoming houseless, or even as a consequence of becoming isolated that way, physically isolated. So it has to be a habitat. First thing, and it has to have the things that habitats have.
That's a very nice term, by the way. I endorse that.
Well, we're talking about the generic in the fullest sense.
Yeah.
And then it has to not create a Chicago project. It has to be open enough and take advantage of the local environment, the space, the air, the temperature, the good weather, all that, so that we don't have things folding in on themselves and dark, dangerous hallways where people get knifed and killed and all that. Nothing like that.
Or let's be candid, as we are in your show. That's the nature of your show, which that's why I like it from the very beginning. Let's take the Sand Island example, right, as an example of how not to do it.
Yeah.
You take a shipping container that's not meant to be for people to begin with.
Yeah.
And then you basically, you kind of shade it, but not really, and then you chop it up and you punch in a little hole that's a window. And you don't feel, as a human being in there, right? You basically feel somewhere.
You're being cast away.
Exactly. So what could be the opposite? And this is now I'm throwing out something that I actually have been working on with the students, actually last year in my favorite class, which is called tree texture. Tree texture is based on the observation that the most beautiful space to be. And I observed that very early, this talking the Kmart on Nimitz, that little triangle between the streets, that is state land, and they put up the sign, no one is supposed to sit there. This is where they used to mingle, and particularly under the trees, because it gives them shade. So this observation is the primary part of that class. So we basically created a project that could be an urban project. You can call it a flash mob project, because I observed that actually, even in predator capitalism.
Flash mob?
Yeah, flash mob.
I love that word.
Yeah,
that's so important.
And is this initiative where things just pop up by social media,
including mobs.
Including mobs, yes. So there's actually, surprisingly, with all the pressure of the capital, and Waikiki being prime land, there's, for example, one lot by me around the corner, which is on Kapahulu and Kuhio. Is that lot that has been vacant ever since I've been there. And at one point there was a sign that really scared me because it would have been the worst to do. There was a construction sign on there and it showed a little one-story, little Hawaiiana, probably would have been a Denny's or something like that, which would have been a waste of prime real estate where you should densify the city. And I was happy again because it was taken down, so it didn't work out. So take this lot and have the flash mob appear, have something rise up, could happen over a weekend. Have a couple cranes, take a large building module to build it with, and it basically shows up. Well, now, in order to make it work, there's a critical point, I think, and you very, humanistically and humanely talked about the core people in that community, which are the ones who are mentally ill. And I think, and this is hard for me to say because I feel bad about it, but I still believe in order to do the very first project, you probably have to work with some who aren't quite at that stage yet. And I know some. One is my neighbor, Jeff. And Jeff, I got to know very early when he was trying to make himself useful in cleaning the shower at Queens Beach, because the city wasn't doing it often enough, so he did it. We all appreciate it. And that way he actually earned himself a ride. When he was not working, he was resting. And he wasn't considered to be a bum and crashing there, right? Because it was all live-work combination, the good old model, right? And it worked.
It's a self-image thing.
The city came basically said, we're not authorized to do that, so go away.
Oh,
so
no.
they pushed him away.
Oh, no.
So then I hadn't seen him for a while, so I was worried. So basically, after a while, I see him again, and he reinvents himself, and he becomes a businessman. There's this little alcove on the street, actually on Kalakau, but right at the corner of Kapahulu, where the Starbucks is. And these little niches in the sidewalk he uses to set up a business. And he goes talking about Hawaiian shirts and floral and leis. Unfortunately, most of the leis that we sell are not made here anymore. They're shipped in where they can be made cheaper, right? So he actually goes and picks real flowers, and he makes real leis on the street, on the sidewalk. There's an ABC store, and they sell silk leis, and that's plastic and not silk, for $1.50. And I'm making assumptions, and I can't prove it, but it must have been them who felt a threat in Jeff to their business. So they called the police. And at that point, I have to say, I had to step in and basically say, Jeff, they're coming, stay away. And we watched him and tried to assign a ticket for, there was no one. The sad part, that took obviously his craft away from the day. So Jeff is one that I count in. And I already talked to Jeff, and I said, I can't promise you, but you would be in. Because Jeff would appreciate. And what would Jeff need? What you said. He would need a roof above his head. Wouldn't he need a home with curtains, with couches? No, he doesn't. Because, at this point of his life, he's happy to have the essentials. But of course, designing that right and in a beautiful way, he wouldn't mind. So he is in. So I'm already counting a couple. I would basically move in. You're welcome to move in with as well.
Well, let's talk about what it is.
And
So,
I intentionally didn't tell you, because hopefully by that point you get at least excited about it, you even like it. And if you would back it up with images,
I want to.
you would like it. And only then at this point, I would tell you, well, you basically live pretty much open outdoors, with protected from the sun and the rain. And only at that point I would say, well, the building material that we had to use is known, and it's called cargo. And I'm still trying to avoid, as much as I try to avoid saying homeless, I try to avoid to say shipping container, because by the time I say shipping container, this has happened. A gate goes down. People basically said this is not what it's supposed to be. So you can't tell people. You have to basically hide it until when people see it, people love it. Because shipping containers have, as they do on ships, you can put them up in no time, and you can take them down in no time. So the idea is that actually then, so we live in a capitalized world, so we're always hoping the philanthropist's going to come to us and they're going to solve the problem, but maybe not. Maybe we have to go to them or not. Maybe we have to go to this owner of that lot and basically say, okay, this is the project. It's going to get good press. It's going to look good because the ones who live in there is going to make it work. And that's going to make your property more valuable because, there's a good project on it rather than being vacant and nothing happening on there. And if that might basically then encourage you, which would be sad for us, but we understand that you have to sell it, you can sell it, and then we go away and we pop up somewhere else. So that's a proposition that you were asking for. And that's not the, but it would be one. And once again, I'm very proud of my students because they're the generation who can make that can make that work because they got the creativity.
Yeah. So what I'm getting is you want to do this quickly, like overnight. Like Frank Fossa used to do things like that. Forget the permit, forget the delay. Let's do it tonight. You wake up in the morning, it's there, and you can't take it off so easily. And I get also that you think shipping containers can be made into worthy, if not aesthetic, homes for the houseless.
Well, to clarify, actually not the shipping container, because the dilemma is what we described in the Sand Island case.
Right.
No one wants to live in a shipping container
Right.
because it's not made to live in.
Right.
But you can use it as a large building module that you basically create spaces in between the containers. They're shaded and protected from the rain. And only your bathroom, your bedroom, something for short-term occupancy could be in the container.
So the containers are common spaces, or? passageways? What are they?
The containers basically become structure. They are the
Do
threshold.
you live in the structure, or is that between living units?
The container would just contain the bare primary, temporary, bathrooms and kitchens maybe.
Oh, infrastructure.
Maybe a bedroom.
Common areas.
So something where you are, not the common areas in between the container, because that's where you spend most of the time is outdoors, the
Yeah.
lanai, right?
Yeah,
That's that's the Hawaii theme.
Would you share the bathrooms and kitchens?
These are all details that you can actually debate, and we did that. We actually made a whole community. We call it actually Stratosphere Lanai Grove. And the grove, just like a grove in nature, consists of every plant is a little
Grove's
different.
Wonderful word.
And every plant in the grove is a little different. Actually, experiment.
Oh, so you don't get a cookie cutter plan?
No.
But there has to be, some sort of common denominator there. For example, what's the minimum square footage you would allow me to live in?
I would say probably all things considered, again, looking at the Sand Island, just like, they talk about micro units, but there is a certain limit to things. I would say if you take a 40-footer and cut it in half, I think that's still decent.
It's 400 feet.
Well, 40-footer is 8 by 40, gets us 320, divided by 2 is 160, right?
160 feet.
I think that's
one
square
person,
square foot.
not a family.
Well, that depends as well. There are families, who need more space, and there are families who can be together.
So you have to have multiple sizes.
So we're going to have options, yeah.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
going to have diversity, and because there's no one size fits all, right?
Yeah.
That's one.
So, okay, and is it square or is it different configurations too?
Well, I mean, the container, it's like the famous, and for me, if not the best American architect, Lou Kahn, always said a brick wants to do what a brick wants to do, So borrowing that, a container is square. So I think, we should actually respect its integrity of being what it is. And, the less we try to tweak that and making it homey, because that's not the point as we talk, right? I mean, what a houseless person appreciates is basically saying, well, Hawaii is my home, because this is the paradise island that I can walk around theoretically, and maybe I can even eat, food that grows on the street, which is the next level, right? So all I need is actually a place where I can rest, and I'm protected. So if we could
Okay.
provide that.
So, so people, you got to cut holes in the containers, right? Would you cut holes for windows? Or
I'm
what?
applying something that I learned when I drove out to one of our guests in Urban Transcendence was Les Campers from Grace Pacific Rocky Mountain Precast. And that was the time when I drove up there to visit him. That is when Cubic Construction had set up their shop out there in Kapolei, where they produce prefab everything for the rail, which I don't want to go there. That's another show, right? And you had enough
Another
of that.
show.
So what they did, and this is what engineers did, they basically cut out 3/5 of the side of the container, and that's doable, that's possible. And ever since I'm thinking this is pretty beautiful, because you end up with the other 2/5, and this is 8 foot, so you actually get up with a square at the end, but the middle of it is basically pretty much open. And then you can even put in what you cut out on rollers on a sliding and make it a sliding door. And this is sort of poetically, because the Metzen signage is exactly centered in the 3/5. So you imagine you pull your container open because you're at home, you want the easy breeze, there's no Metzen. But if you close it again, the container is there again.
Okay. Now, what about painting? You paint them? You paint them the same color, different colors? You paint them not at all?
Well, the key is actually doesn't come from how you want to make them look, but you got to come from what they need to be, how they need to be treated as far as to be comfortable. And we know metal is hot, so you need to protect it from the sun. So there are two ways. You can either put a roof on, or what we do when we go out in the sun, we put a sunscreen on. So the proposal in that specific case, because we really want to run on like the lowest budget possible, we say we don't do overhangs or eaves because they're going to be more costly, but we can take advantage of another abundant building material that's around. It's called Albizia. These are the trees we hate recently because they all come down because of the storms.
Tree, yeah.
And currently there's a program, or Kamehameha School, many others in the state takes them down and basically doesn't know what to do with them. We would take that and make that albizia our sunscreen. So you can make a very sort of simple, and that would also sort of enhance, the optics of the container, but we would use the wood as a board and batten system, so you have these vertical lines of wood, so it would sort of underscore or underline, almost like eyeline, using a
So you're taking the top off then?
Of the container?
Yeah.
No, the top, the containers are stacked, so you couldn't really take the top off, you take the sides out pretty much, and open the container to the sides.
Okay, but are you stacking habitat upon habitat? Like, this is multi-story?
It is multi-story, yeah. We consulted Glenn Miyasada, who is co-teaching structures in my school, and he said, go as high as they go on ships, right? Because that's what they're made for. So it's like 8, 9 stories high you can go.
Wow.
Further you can go. So imagine in Waikiki and anywhere else on these sort of unused lots, and they're going to be, everyone who has seen that says these are beautiful, these are pieces of art, they're compositions, and you inhabit them with the people. And I think if you start this from bottom up and you do one case study, one prototype, and you make it work, then you have the other ones, we call them eligible, renters. They would have to say, well, if you want to qualify, you also got to basically buy into that dream. And of course, you got to then, you have to respect it, right? You have to accept it and respect it. But if it's respecting you, you're going to respect it. That's sort of our philosophy.
How many
behind.
stories?
Well, as I said, 9, up to 8, 9 stories.
I'm sorry, the question was, how do you get from story to story?
How do you
get from story to story?
Oh,
Somebody got to build a ladder, stairs.
This exciting question, I think I allow myself to answer after the next break we're going to take now, and then we're going to be back to Howard Wick's little different Code Green show today.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on Think Tech Hawaii. I hope that you will tune in and watch the show. It is inspiring and uplifting and educational. Also, we talk with artists of all different ilk. We talk with them about what they do, how they do it, and most importantly, most dear to my heart, why they do it. And it never ceases to be fascinating when you get the answer to that question. I hope you'll join us on Center Stage, 2 o'clock Wednesday afternoons. Aloha.
Aloha, my name is Reg Baker, and I'm the host of Business in Hawaii with Reg Baker. Business in Hawaii is a program that is positive stories about business in Hawaii. We're tired of hearing the negativity and why it's the wrong place to have a business. We talk about the positive reasons for having a business in Hawaii and how to be successful. We broadcast live every Thursday at 2 o'clock. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Great question. Welcome back to Howard Wick's Code Green. This time a little different. Jay and I talking about the social houselessness or housefulness, we can say. So I owe you a question. The question was, how is vertical circulation going on? It's going to be a simple staircase, but it's going to, thanks to Howard, our main showmaster of this show here, he has been successful in talking the Department of Permitting and Planning into that external staircases don't have to be enclosed anymore as they used to be based on the International Building Code, which is an invasive code. And basically his revision or his tropical appendix allows us to have them easy breezy again. So you basically use a staircase as to walk up, and you can either attach them or you can integrate them. Again, there are different ways to do that.
You see wood or steel or what?
Yeah, the shipping container is basically out of steel, so we would stay with that material. But then the sunscreen, it's not based upon how we want it to look, but it's based upon what resources do we have and how can we, in the most clever way, basically apply them to then, make them look beautiful, because there's a logic behind it. We should actually, thankfully there was a question by a viewer here, and maybe, and this is along the lines here, are shipping containers the only option for alternative modular housing for the houseless in Honolulu? And I really appreciate that question, because I think no. And I was even like, I didn't even want to touch shipping containers, and we actually ran a separate show that Ryan Rutenschur did actually with Howard. So we did a couple of shows, and I just thought, and my very best friend is Hans Slavik, and he's the author of what they call the Bible of shipping container architecture. Is called Container Atlas. One of my former employees was a co-author. I was always too close to shipping containers there. I thought I could never do it. But given the circumstances that it is one of our most abundant building materials here on the island, I did it. But I've been there, I've done it. I would love this project to happen, but the answer to the question is no. I think we need other means and methods.
Like
Another project that is currently going on that I'm doing in collaboration with David Rockwood, my dear friend and professor at UH, and the students in that tree texture class. We call this project Primitiva. Primitiva is the poetic working title for that. And it's rethinking, our civilization, looking down on primitive cultures. For the longest time, we're thinking, oh, you were so simple, you weren't smart enough, and now we created all this technology. Well, there's a sort of a awakening here now that we realize, where did this really get us? And we start to reappreciate the primitive.
Go back to basics.
You just do exactly. And then there's a little more complicated academic working title that I was telling you and made you laugh, and that's called Proletarian People Power Tower.
Alliteration.
So that one basically looks into what other building material, and that goes back to the show we had with Les Campers. Concrete is not considered to be the most pleasant local material, but if you think about it, it actually could be, because 3 of the 4 ingredients, water, aggregates, and sand, are potentially local. The aggregates could be basalt, and you can also make the sand by grinding it. The only thing you have to ship in cement, and there are alternatives to that. So when you use that, and then people will say, well, I live in a concrete building, so forget about it because it's getting hot. Well, if you use concrete massively, yes. If we use it just in a bony way, just little sticks here and there, and we talked before, I just had absolutely fascinated by my meeting I had with the great Dr. Alfred Yee, who is the living legend. He's 90 years young now, who has been the engineer on all these fabulous projects from the golden era, Osipov's IBM building, Killingsworth, Kahala Hilton, and numerous other projects from along these lines. And so we use concrete in a very efficient and effective way, prefabricated. We just use as little concrete as we need, and we build a skeleton. And in the skeleton, gives us basically the place to nest, almost like birds. And then we bring in the albizia again because it just happened to be such an abundant resource. And we basically make the interior, it could almost be sweat equity, that the people basically, so the wood is not structural because when the trees fall down, that means there must be something wrong or not good with albizia.
The concrete is structural.
The concrete is structural.
But what about a screen so that you can have some privacy?
Excellent point. And what do you make the screens? And we're using something that is sort of odd because it's the wrong, we put something in the wrong way as far as the structure, and that sounds like bad, right? It sounds like there's some trouble there. But we use what the double T's are. The double T's is a construction method. If you go to, sometimes you got to look at the industries. When you look about building really like the cheapest way to build, because it's got to be, because who's going to fund it, we got to figure it out to build it the most efficient and effective way. You look at current practices and you learn. So not that we want to endorse Walmart, but if you drive to Walmart here at Ala Moana, when you drive into the parking garage and you look up, that's a double T, what you see. And engineers figured this out a long time ago, and it's made out there in Kapolei by Les Campers, Great Pacific Rocky Mountain Precast, and they made it prefabricated. They have it figured out. And it's these vertical parts, which you call webs, going down, and the horizontal part is the flange. And we put this in the wrong way, we flip it. So basically you have these webs basically going up, and then we put albizia wood planks on it. Oh. And what you have underneath, it provides you a multitude of, you can run your systems in there, your water and your electricity, but you can have your storage in there. You can have a sunken bathtub. You can have, I am the one, and my students laugh at me because they say, well, we're going to close the lid and then it's a coffin for you. But I would sleep in there because it's just as deep that the wind, if there's a breeze, basically goes over you, and you have a little alcove kind of bed.
And it's private.
And it's private. So this is all basically the concept that you just do the bare minimum with the material that makes the most sense, the most logic. And then if you think about, you know, you have these kind of troughs in the floor. So what else can you put in there? And you almost got there, you know, nature, you could paint nature in there. You can make your little koi pond in there in your unit because you already got it built in.
Landscaping with soil?
There you go. There you go. And there was this great show that former AIA President Scott Wilson had where he was sharing his fascination about green high-rises.
Yes, I was
Right?
there.
Exactly.
Yes,
So
yes.
building, and the show greatly, thank you, inspired us to go that way. And we were consulting a landscape architect here, Jennifer Apple. And she basically taught us a lot. And she said, don't bring soil. So you got to forget about the soil term, Jay, because I have to. We got to forget about it because if you bring soil into a building, you invite trouble, right? It's going to
Yeah.
get moist. You're going
Yeah.
to invite the bugs.
Yeah.
So
It's
use
not
something
clean,
else.
yeah.
Use perlite. And perlite is
Where
an
things will
all-natural.
grow in that, and there won't
Exactly.
be all the negatives about soil.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
But you use the green basically in your most outer periphery of the tower, and the tower is a circle tower. Because the circle is, first of all, the most structural integral form, like a bamboo. You know, if you cut through a bamboo.
A tower.
A tower.
Tower.
So it will
A
be
tower you can see
it
from-
will be a taller building, yes.
In the
for
middle, so
because-
it creates a unified architectural shape that way
yes,
with
yes,
the tower.
yeah, it would.
It's
And-
just not a stack of things.
no,
It's-
no, no. It just all comes together the way,
yeah.
you know,
You gotta
it
do that.
makes sense.
Because I was gonna say that, you know, you've got to account for the taste of neighbors. And
Yeah.
they have to see
Yeah.
this as aesthetic, or they will oppose
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
And that will be, you know, the term primitiva, there's a great tradition here, the exotica movement, music movement way back of Martin Denny and Dennis Baxter and people like that. And they basically created that term. So it was about, they knew Hawaii, you know, would never be the same what it was. But they knew there's this new sort of perception of Hawaii that people will have in the world. So they interpreted that.
We have to, we should, we have the ability to design
Yeah.
a solution for the homeless architecturally. What the only point I'm left with though is, and it's not an architectural point, but maybe it is, in terms of designing this so that it encourages people to keep it clean. It encourages people to maintain it and to have some attachment to the habitat, so they won't just trash the
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
And how do you do that? Any ideas?
We are at the end of the show, which is super exciting, but we don't want to leave the audience with that brilliant question unanswered. So my very short answer would be inclusive. That's a term we adopt more than ever. You got to make it inclusive of everyone, but it's going to be exclusive of mindset. So people who are going to be in there, and this is what Dr. Yu told me, that Queen Emma Gardens was initially a social housing project, that the bus driver was living there next to a millionaire. But they all had the mindset that they wanted this modern, clean, elegant living. That's what they agreed upon. And that's what we need. So we need to sort of, you know, basically crowdsource, you know, the right people with the right mindset. And I'm pretty sure, and my students are very proud, they're actually doing that. They're going out and thinking of real people who would be in need and willing to go in there. So we program for real people and not this abstract thing. Okay, we make a bunch of boxes and then whoever pays big money to be in there. That's a 21st century predator capitalism
So
term.
you select the people who would be comfortable in being there.
Yeah.
You select the people who wouldn't trash the place. And if they don't qualify, they can't come in. And if you're wrong and they went in and trashed the place, they'd be out.
Yeah, that's what
So-
he told me was in Queen Emma Gardens. He said it was very inclusive, everyone was welcoming, but then everyone had to behave, and if one didn't, you got one warning and then you were out.
Yeah.
And he said that worked out
Makes
fine.
a lot of sense. You need that because we're talking about social architecture here. And
Exactly.
you need to account for the social
Exactly.
parameters. Yeah.
So I'm very happy we're at the end of the show, but I'm happy to put some pictures to the words. So when the students have done their projects, it's probably good to show it and show images and show models, how that would materialize.
Bring one down.
I will.
Maybe two.
I will. And until then, thank you very much for the opportunity
Thank you, Martin.
to be my guest.
Thank you,
This
Martin.
was an awesome show. All right. Thank you very much.